A lawyer in defense of democracy, Barrister Kingdom Okere, has called on the international communities to issue a travel ban on the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, and all the senators that sat at plenary and allowed Akpabio to preside over a matter that he is supposed to be a defendant. Barrister Kingdom noted that the senators lack basic and primary principles of the 1999 Constitution. News Imefunukon.
Recall that the Senate suspended Senator Natasha Akpoti-Oduahan for 6 months for violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Nigerian Senate to public ridicule. Against this backdrop, a lawyer in defense of democracy, Barrister Kingdom Okere, and a sexual and gender-based violence survivors counselor Ruth Ndepe, and also human rights lawyer Angela Uzoma, in their separate reactions described the procedure leading to the suspension of Senator Natasha as faulty and fraudulent.
Don't go ahead with the probe. Return on Friday, and they start on Thursday to suspend her. So you see that everything is shrouded in illegality, criminality. So I am calling on the international community to give travel ban on Akpabio and all the male senators that sat on that plenary, and allow Akpabio to preside over a matter in his own cause, a matter where Akpabio is a defendant. The senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria sat like vegetables, like morons. Allow a man that should be a respondent in a fellow senator's petition to preside over a matter. None of them is reasonable enough to have objected to say, Mr. Senate President, step aside, let another person preside over this section for the purpose of hearing Natasha's petition, and again, insisting that the petition should be thoroughly heard by, hearing both parties, Akpabio putting his defense to the Natasha's petition, and Natasha proving her petition before arriving at any resolution. They have just exhibited that they lack basic, just a primary principle of our law, a matter that is in the 1999 Constitution. A senator does not know a fair hearing provision of the 1999 Constitution. Then he shouldn't be a senator. They are all vegetables.
Even if he's the Senate President, he ought to have stepped aside during the investigation and also in terms of announcing the outcome, because he is involved. And this also brings to question how women are treated in professional spaces when there is a very serious accusation bordering on sexual harassment. Is not to be treated with levity. This is one of the reasons why women continue to endure sexual harassment in workplaces. An accusation has been made. It ought not to be hastily treated. And the fact that it was treated in the manner it was, and they've rushed out with the judgments, and the Senate President still has to be the one to announce it against, even though there's an accusation against himself. The entire procedure is flawed.
Like, if they had given her an opportunity for her petition to have been investigated before being suspended, that would have been right, but the petition was not considered at all. Do you understand? So I feel like that infringes a lot of rights and goes against natural justice, equity, and good conscience on the part of the Senate.
Speaking on the implications of the actions of the Red Chamber, the legal practitioners noted that the Senate President should have stepped down and allowed the petition against him to be investigated.
To call for an independent panel to be set up to hear both sides, to investigate, and then to come out with appropriate measures, and particularly against whomever the accusation is against. That's what should be obtainable, not boxing her to a corner. Her voice may have been silenced, and looking at the wider impact on other women, not just in the legislature, but in other young women are watching, those that are enduring sexual harassment in different sectors around. How would they be emboldened to be able to speak up if at her own level, as a senator, this is happening to her? She's been boxed up and hushed down. So
far, I have had to counsel a lot of women who are survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. There is a lot of data, but halfway through, these women are pressurized to withdraw their cases, both in the police station, both in gender offices. So is there a large number of women who are victims? Yes, there is, yes, and we have a data for that.
It is not just an affront. The Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is now a subject of ridicule. And in fact, all the senators who sat there like vegetables, like morons, and allow Akpabio preside over the Senate in a matter that concerns him, in a matter where he is the respondent in Natasha's petition, what they have just done is to ridicule the Nigerian Senate.
The controversy, which began on February 20, 2025, after a seating arrangement dispute with Senator Akpabio, thereafter degenerated to accusation of sexual harassment and alleged abuse of office, and later led to a 1 million naira alleged defamation suit against the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. However, the lawmakers ruled that the suspension of Natasha could be lifted or reduced if she tenders a written apology. Imefon Okon reporting for Kebbi News.
A suspected outbreak of cerebrospinal meningitis has reportedly claimed the lives of 26 people in Aliero, Gwandu, and Jega local government areas of Kebbi State. The incident was confirmed by the Kebbi State government this Tuesday. Cerebrospinal meningitis is a serious infection that causes inflammation of the protective membranes covering the brain and spinal cord. It is usually caused by bacteria or viruses and can be spread from person to person. Symptoms include fever, severe headache, neck stiffness, nausea, vomiting, and sensitivity to light. If not treated quickly, it can lead to serious complications or death. May the souls of the departed rest in peace. Nigeria, once a mere transit point for global cocaine trafficking, has alarmingly transformed into a consuming nation, with the country's vulnerable citizens increasingly succumbing to the use of illicit substances. This transformation is a result of a complex web of factors, including corruption, poverty, and lack of effective enforcement of laws. Clearview's Florence Joshua gives us an in-depth analysis of this.
In the 90s, Nigeria's strategic location in West Africa made it an attractive transit hub for South American cocaine cartels seeking to expand their reach into the European market. The country's porous borders, corrupt officials, and lack of effective law enforcement created a conducive environment for traffickers to operate with impunity. However, over time, Nigeria's role in the global cocaine trade has evolved, with the country becoming a significant consumer of illicit substances. Data from the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency shows that the number of drug users in Nigeria increased from 3.3 million in 2011 to 14.4 million in 2021. This rise in drug consumption has coincided with an increase in reported crimes, including violent attacks by Boko Haram insurgents and bandits. Nigeria's insecurity has been traced to the 80s, when many young people turned to crime and illicit substances due to economic hardship. The rise of campus cults and organized crime groups in the 90s further exacerbated this problem, where campus cults, once a relic of Nigeria's university system, evolved into powerful organized crime groups, providing a steady supply of recruits for drug trafficking syndicates. This group, often linked to powerful politicians and business leaders, became a major force in Nigeria's illicit drug trade. The rise of these groups has contributed significantly to Nigeria's growing drug consumption.
We see that the illicit drug market, while still predominantly being essentially an in-person trade, is moving quickly into the web.
Furthermore, the NDLEA reported that many of the perpetrators of violent crimes in Nigeria, including Boko Haram insurgents and bandits, are often under the influence of illicit substances. For example, in 2020, the NDLEA reported that 7% of Boko Haram insurgents arrested in the northeast region tested positive for cannabis and other illicit substances. The history of Nigeria's insecurity crisis is closely tied to the rise of illicit drug consumption. Today, Nigeria's security challenge is one of the most pressing problems facing the country. The Boko Haram insurgents in the northeast, banditry in the northwest, and kidnappings in the south-south are just a few examples of the many security challenges facing the country.
This means that more people with drug use disorders that will need the services to cater for them with a wider geographical coverage of our interventions, and of course the existing challenges, because wherever you have issues of drug use, drug misuse, there are always issues of public health and security. And of course, parents must be brought on board. Communities must be involved so that people have understand the social drivers of drug use, so that parents, communities, and of course, leaders, policymakers will be able to make informed decisions. But as it is, I think we really need to prepare, because the situation is still far. We are still within in the woods, and we are far from being out of the woods.
To combat this menace and its effect on security, experts recommend a multifaceted approach that includes socio-economic development, international cooperation, evidence-based law enforcement efforts, and increased anti-corruption measures. As Nigeria grapples with the consequences of drug consumption, it is imperative that the government, civil society, and international partners work together to address the root causes of this crisis and chart a path towards a safer, healthier future for all Nigerians. Florence Joshua reporting for Clearview News Desk.
Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Education, Suweiba Ahmed, has urged the governments of Bauchi, Katsina, Kebbi, and Kano states to reconsider their decisions to shut down state-owned schools for Ramadan. Ahmed, who was a guest on a TV program, feared that time would be lost if schools remained shut for Ramadan. According to her, the Federal Ministry of Education has started engaging the 4 state governments to reopen the school, though admitting that the federal government has no control over state-owned schools. Recall that there has been outrage over the closure of schools in at least 4 northern states with predominantly Muslim inhabitants for the Ramadan fast. The Christian Association of Nigeria (CAN) had argued that the closure of schools for 5 weeks in the region with high-level poverty and illiteracy was counterproductive, discriminatory, and a violation of the rights of non-Muslim students living in the affected states. The Christian body also argued that the closure of schools for the Ramadan fast would worsen the educational crisis. According to the United Nations Children's Education Fund, UNICEF, Nigeria had about 18.3 million out-of-school children as of 2024. A Muslim transgender woman and TikToker, Ratu Thalisa, has reportedly been sentenced to almost 3 years in prison for telling Jesus Christ to cut his hair. Ms. Thalisa allegedly spoke to the image of Jesus on her phone, telling him to get a haircut while on live stream after a comment that she should cut her hair to look more like a man. According to reports, a court in Medan, Sumtra on Monday found Ms. Thalisa guilty of spreading hatred under an online hate speech law, thereby sentencing her to 2 years and 10 months in jail. The court said Ms. Thalisa could disrupt public order and religious harmony by her post, charging her with committing blasphemy. The court ruling came after several Christian groups in the country filed police complaints against the TikToker for blasphemy, which she was given 7 days to appeal. Meanwhile, human rights organization Amnesty International Indonesia has condemned the sentencing of Ms. Thalisa, describing it as a shocking attack on her freedom of expression. The organization also called for the revocation of the sentence. In a statement, its executive director Usman Hamid said the Indonesian authorities should not use the country's electronic information and transactions law to punish people for comments made on social media. Angry youths in Naka, Benue State have reportedly set fire to the palace of the community's traditional ruler, Chief Daniel Abomtse, and parts of the Gwe West Local Government Secretariat this Tuesday while protesting the killing of 3 people. The violence, it was gathered, erupted after suspected armed herders reportedly killed 3 operatives of the Benue Civil Protection Guards at Garuwa community in the local government. According to reports, the bodies of the victims were brought to Naka in the early hours of Tuesday, triggering protests that escalated into destruction. The chairman of Gwe West Local Government Area, Victor Omirin, and Te Nagi, Chief Daniel Abomtse, confirmed the incident to journalists on Tuesday. Meanwhile, efforts to reach the Benue State Police Public Relations Officer Catherine Anene were unsuccessful. And that's the news. You can follow up on latest events and happenings around you via our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Clearview News Desk, or via our handle on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Clearview Online. Many thanks for joining us. I am Gloria Atta. Bye for now.